All right, what's up, everybody? It's your man DJ Swamp Thing. This is What's Your Hustle, a podcast where we are bridging the gap between creatives, artistic world, and the professional world with business professionals, entrepreneurs. What our first guest doesn't know is this is our very first episode of What's Your Hustle. So you are our first guest.
Hey, okay, I'm honored.
You are our
I
first
did not know
guest.
that. And I'm excited to be here. Okay, let's kick it off.
Let's get it. Let's get it. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, London Elixir, what's up?
Hey, what's going on? How you feeling?
Man, it is all good. How are you?
I'm good, man. Blessed. Can't complain. Can't complain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, listen, we're not going to prolong this. Tell everybody what's your hustle.
Oh, man, what isn't my hustle at this point? Like I do so much. So primarily I am a music producer.
Okay.
That's my passion, that's my love. That's what I've been doing for a while. And I do a lot of work in sync licensing, which is basically getting your music placed on TV, commercials, film, stuff like that. And I also recently began DJing. Well, it's been like a year now. Yeah. So I've
Okay.
been
It's been that
DJing.
long?
And I also it's been a year now, technically, since I like really decided like I need to start. It hasn't been a year since I started gigging. I didn't start really gigging until April of
Okay.
last year.
Okay.
But I mean, I picked up the board like a year ago. So yeah, I'm DJing and I'm producing a film right now too, actually, about how I got into sync licensing. So it's like an informative documentary. Um piece and it's going to be super cool. So yeah, I just do a little bit of everything. Oh, and I'm an author. I wrote a book. I
Yep.
hustle, y'all. Like I am a hustler. Yeah.
That is that you are, and so I want to give people a little bit of a backstory. I've been fortunate to be a friend of yours, and I kind of know a little bit about the beginning of your journey from conversations and time we have spent.
Yeah.
Because you are from Columbus, Ohio, you live in Atlanta currently. So
Yes, sir. Mhm.
so let you know. So you went to college, did the college thing, graduated, had a great job coming out of college. So just tell everybody
Mhm.
about that part, and then the transition into deciding to go the entrepreneur way.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So honestly, I decided to go to school for computer science and engineering. But I've always known that music production was my passion, like since high school when I was first introduced to it. But I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to the Ohio State University for academics, and they didn't offer music production as a major. And I was like, I can't pass up a full ride. So what else can I do? And I was, everybody always told me I should get into engineering. I was the valedictorian of my high school. You're so smart. You should do robotics, like whatever. So I was like looking up all the different engineering programs, and I was like, which one doesn't require chemistry? Because I was terrible at chemistry, and it was computer science. So I was like, okay, cool. Let's do computer science. So it was always in the back of my head, like, if I can't do what I want to do off rip, I'm going to do something that's in high demand. So that way I could get in, get out in 4 years. I don't have to do like residencies and all that extra stuff. It's something I
Right,
could study for those 4 years, get my degree, and get out and make a lot of money as soon as I
right.
get out. Take that money and figure out how to fund my own music career. So that was the plan. Graduated with my degree in computer science and engineering, and started like got that job and paid for music production school. So I was working full time while I was going to the studio, learning how to produce like for real, and engineering as well. And then, same, like I was working full time for like 3 years on that job, like using the money to do what I
Right,
felt like just that would help, like make moves that would help me get to the end goal, which was quitting my job to do music full time. So
right.
buying music equipment, paying for music school,
Okay.
moving to Atlanta, all of those things, because the job was work from home. That was another perk of it
Mhm.
being computer science. This is pre-pandemic, so
Right.
working from home wasn't common like that. So it was like, it was like a blessing to get a job fresh out of college working from home, and it was because it was an IT job. So you know, um, worked that job, like I said, for a few years after I graduated, until I felt like, God was telling me now is the time to take this leap of faith and do
Yeah.
music full time. So yeah, that's a
Yeah.
short version of the
Right,
story.
right, right. So what was there? Was there an event or an epiphany of some sort? Like was there something in your heart or your spirit that was the final decision of you saying, you know what? Yeah, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave because the job was comfortable. You were making money. I know you could have made obviously you could have done great doing what you were doing. So I mean, in any
Mhm.
time you decide to kind of jump out there, it is a little scary. It can be, uncertain, right? So
Mhm.
what was that final straw for you that made you decide I'm definitely going to take this leap?
There were a few different things like leading up to it that, kind of made me feel like maybe it's time to go. I write about it in my book. It's called Shake and Shift, the chapter 8, and it's about like when things became shaky in my life, and I felt like maybe it's time to start shifting. One of the things that was shaky was like, I got a new manager. The same exact time I moved to Atlanta, I got a new manager. So I'm making this decision to move, thinking I understand like what my responsibility is, what my roles
Right,
are, and like like just kind of like understanding where I'm at with this job. And then I move and like everything switches, and it's like I felt like God was trying to make me uncomfortable. Like, you're moving, you're making moves in one area of your life. Like, you need to start realizing that it's going to affect other things. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to be able to take this job forever. So it became uncomfortable for 2 years. I was working under a manager that was making things difficult. And
right,
anybody who works a job that they're not really passionate about can relate.
yeah,
Some who work jobs that they are passionate about can relate. So I started to feel like it wasn't lining up. But as more and more things came, I started feeling like I was seeing like signs, like maybe I should quit. I'm reading the Bible. I'm very spirit led. It was a very spiritual decision when I decided to quit. It wasn't like, oh, I got a major placement, I'm comfortable now. Like, I
right,
hadn't had any sync placements at the time. I wasn't comfortable at all. I wasn't DJing at the time. So like, it was like a real leap of faith. I was going to take a huge risk, a huge pay cut. And I personally didn't think I was ready to do that. So I was doing this Bible study with my cousin and one of my friends, and it was basically the 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 theme of it was move when God is calling you to action. And I was like, I had already felt like God was telling me to get off of my job, but I was just like scared. So I was waiting,
yeah,
like, well, maybe I could do it at this point. Maybe
yeah,
after I do this, or maybe if I save enough money to do this and I could get a
yeah,
house first, like, so I could show proof of employment. It was all of these plans I had in my mind that I needed to do before.
right,
And like, even though I felt like it's time to leave this job. And after that Bible study, and it just said, move when God is calling you to action. Sometimes stuff happens and you read stuff and it's like, oh, that's speaking directly to me.
yep,
I
yep.
put my notice in the next day. I was like, you know
Wow,
what? Let me stop playing, because
wow,
you never gonna feel comfortable. Like,
yeah,
there's never gonna be the time where you're like, I'm here, I can make it, I'm doing it now. Like,
yeah,
it's always gonna be a risk, and it was very scary. But with me making spiritual decisions, I felt confident knowing that it was the right thing to do. But that does not change the fact that it's scary.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You said a couple of things in there. One thing I want to highlight real quick was the fact that you felt you felt that uncomfortable feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and that is one thing that when we talk about, some of the major decisions or moving on to something that you're unsure the results, because unfortunately, we might know what we want to do and we might know how to get there, but we might not know the exact steps. We don't get to see the end result, right? We can
Mm-hmm.
only go
Mm-hmm.
by faith, right? So that in
Mm-hmm.
itself is uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of individuals don't follow their passion and their dreams and their hustle because of that feeling. That feeling of uncomfortable, that no one likes to feel uncomfortable, unsure,
Mm-hmm.
what type of risk, and it's just a lot. But stepping on faith like you did, and using
Mm-hmm.
your relationship with the Most High, definitely,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure helped you into doing that. And not only that, but now you're seeing the results, right?
Right,
All
right,
these
exactly,
couple of
a
years later,
hundred
you're like, you know
percent.
what? I made the best decision. I made the right decision.
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah,
course, of
yeah.
course.
So going into that now. So now you've moved. You quit the job. You're entrepreneur. You're doing this thing. You moved to a new city. Um, at what point did you say, you know what? I'm going to share my experience in a book form, or were you doing speaking events that led to the book, or how did PTO come about?
Yeah. That's a great question. So, PTO came about because after I quit my job, all of my peers started reaching out to me. Oh my gosh, I want to quit my job too. What
Right.
did you do? And I think they were expecting me to be like, oh man, I met somebody, they put me on, or I got this placement with such and such, and they
Yep.
pay me this much. And
Yep.
like that was not the case. And like I kept like finding myself like people, it was so many people asking me, people in my DMs, people like in real life, like people ask, hey, like we ain't talking about, let me take you to lunch so I can pick your brain. And I was like, wow, there's really a demand for this information. And they think it's something that it's not. And it's kind of hard to like just tell this whole story,
Sure.
you know. So, but I
Sure.
was like, you know, again, I'm spirit led. I felt like God was putting on my spirit, like to just put it all down in a book, because my experience was like unique to me, but I feel like a lot of people could relate to it. Even like if you're not an entrepreneur, it's really about living in your true purpose and
Sure.
like just walking in alignment with what you feel like you're supposed to be doing. So I was like, you know, people keep asking me, let me put it in a book. So it wasn't planned. I never planned to become an author, or, you know, it was like, oh, people keep asking, I'm going to write it down. So yeah, that's how PTO, paid time off, came about.
Wow, that's awesome. And I know the book is doing well. I still remember when you were just starting to push it, and just the reaction on social media you were getting was seemed to be overwhelming. So I can just
Mhm,
imagine what it's been now that it's been out for a while, and you get a
mhm.
lot of you changing lives out there with that book, I'm sure.
Man, all glory to God. Like I still get DMs like to this day
Yeah,
of people who have just read the book or who have reread the book, and they're
yeah,
like sending me parts like this is exactly what I'm going through right now. And
yeah.
my personally, like I'll go back and read my book every so often, because it's like I might find myself in a situation where I need to be reminded of the things that I said. And there'll be times when I'm like reading my book, like I cannot believe I wrote this. That was like the Holy Spirit guiding me, because I'll find myself in situations where I have to really remind myself of things that I already know because I put it in a book. And it's
Yeah,
like life will come at you and you'll like be in situations and you start to feeling and thinking and doubting and all of this stuff. And it's like, nope, go back to the book.
yeah,
Like the same guy who told you to do this and who helped
right.
you through that last situation, gonna help you through this situation. So yeah, like yeah, man, shout out to God, because I feel like that book was necessary for, and it's so timeless. Like, and this is really a testament. Like I'm gonna keep putting it on God, because like this was not in my plans. And
Mhm.
like I just met a lady at this church that I've been going to, and heard her testimony, and she's like, and I'm like listening to her story, and I'm like, oh, you need to read my book. And she read it, she was like, this speaks to exactly what I'm going through, and I wrote that book years ago, you know. So it's like that's God, like, you know,
Yeah,
he knew what was going to be necessary for others. So like shout out to God for just
yeah.
using me as a vessel.
Absolutely, and timeless is the word. That's a big word. That book is definitely timeless. So we both of us have very deep experiences with working with artists and
Yes.
musical artists and independent artists and stuff like that. And one of the things that I know always comes up, and especially on the indie culture, and trying to break in the industry, or get that that major put on, to start doing stuff. And I know sync, like, being able to sync your music comes up. So
Yeah.
first of all, can you, because even myself am not 100% on the true definition. So can you break down what that actually is?
Yeah, so sync licensing is basically, in simple terms, it's like the pairing of music with video, like with picture.
Yep.
So it's like syncing music to picture. So
Yep.
basically that's for TV, film, it could be commercials. Technically, like sync isn't considered ads, but like we could like bunch it in there for the sake of conversation.
Sure.
But yeah, that's the simple definition of it, and it pays. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
the short definition of what sync licensing is.
So
Yeah.
how does one get involved in that? Because I think, amongst a lot of other things, unfortunately, a lot of folks are still, and I've been doing this for a while too, but we still have that mentality about having to know someone. And I know sometimes
Mhm.
things play a part in it, but how does one do that? How does one get their music on a TV show, on a movie, on a commercial?
That's a good question. So there are a few different ways that you could go about it. So there is the music library route, which is something that I typically would suggest to people who have never had any sync placements, because you don't actually have to know anybody personally to get your music into a library. So what a library is it's a catalog of music that music supervisors or music professionals might go to try to pull music from for their projects that they're working on, be it a advertising campaign or a TV show, an indie film, anything like that. They go and they look for music in these catalogs, and if they find something that fits, they pay you to use your music. So that's what I typically suggest, because like I said, you can just Google music libraries and see who's accepting music, who's taking submissions and things like that. And there are a lot of music libraries out there. There are exclusive libraries, there are non-exclusive libraries, which is basically like if you put your music in an exclusive library, you can't put that same song in any other library. They're repping that song exclusively for the term of your agreement. Wow. Whereas non-exclusive libraries, they, you can have the same song in multiple libraries and be shopping it on your own. Sure. So music libraries is definitely the number one that I would say for people who, don't have any experience, don't know where to go, where to start, who to talk to. Right. Music libraries, it gives you a good foundation for looking up, just for the process, how to upload your music, metadata, writing to briefs, just familiarizing yourself with how things go. I would suggest music libraries. And then speaking to I could pause. I know I could get to talking, so let me pause. No, so that's music library.
No, you're good. Yeah, no, you're perfect. But the only thing I wanted to throw in there was, as a DJ, we have specific ways that the music's supposed to be sent, right? So is that the same with a singer? Like for myself, this will never change. Like I need a clean version, I need a dirty version, I need, it's got to be free. You know what I mean? Like are those some of the requirements that are also needed for sync licensing?
Yes, exactly. So each library has different requirements. So you have to pay attention to how they want you to submit your music. There's some that want you to send waves. Some people want you to send AIF. Some people need stems. Right. Some people, with sync, I always suggest having a clean version of your song, because it just broadens the spectrum of ways that your music can be placed. Yeah. And when I say clean version with sync, I don't mean just go and bleep out the cuss words and verify them out. I mean, create a version of the song that doesn't have cuss words in it. Rewrite those 2 or 3 lines where you're cussing, so that way it still feels like a full song. It doesn't feel like an edited version. It's a full, clean song. Yeah. So it just depends on the library, whatever they're asking for. You just got to pay attention.
Yeah. Okay. What was your first sync song and how was that experience?
Oh, great question. You have such good questions. Okay, so my first sync song, very first sync placement was for a song called Weekend Vibe. And the story behind that is kind of funny. I got in the studio and created this song with a few other people. It was a 4-person collab. And we submitted it for a brief. It was with a music library, and they put a brief, which is basically a description of what they're looking for. So it'd be like, hey, we're looking for Afrobeat, female vocals, good energy that talks about partying. Okay, that's the brief. Let's go create something. Yeah. All right. And they'll tell you this is for $10,000. It was a $10,000 brief. So we're like, oh, bet, let's create something. Yeah. We created, we submitted, didn't get picked up. So 2 years go by, and I make connections with music supervisors now. I've gone from the music library route to trying to connect with people personally who do music, so I could try to get placements. Sure. And they were the guy that I connected with. His name is Paul Stewart. He's a music supervisor. He's done Poetic Justice, Too Fast, Too Furious. He worked on what's that? Snowfall, The Hype. He's done a lot of stuff. So he was working on this show called The Hype, which was going to be on HBO Max, which is a streetwear fashion competition show. Right. And it had Cardi B, Offset, it was just a star-studded show. And he was like, yeah, I'm working on this right now. If you want, you can send some music. If we find a fit, we find a fit. I'm like, okay, cool. So this is my first time doing it this way. So I sent a bunch of tracks. And a few months later, he hits me. He's like, hey, do you have the Weekend Vibe instrumental? I'm like, yeah. So I sent him the instrumental. So usually you only send you might send the main version and the instrumental. Those are the two most common. And if they need anything else, they'll ask for it.
Sure.
So typically if somebody comes back, if I just send them the full song and they come back and ask me for an instrumental, I'm like, okay, they're thinking about using it.
Right.
So he's like, hey, let's get the instrumental. I'm like, okay, send the instrumental. Next thing I know, he's sending me contracts. He's like, hey, so here's the agreement. Here's the price we're going to pay for it. We're going to use it on episode 3. And, this is the deal. Go ahead and sign off on it. And I'm like, okay, bet. So I'm like, okay, when does the show come out? So the show comes out in August. This is like in July when we're doing paperwork, maybe even sooner, maybe like June or May. And he's like, sending me all the paperwork and stuff. And then now it's like, I know I'm getting a placement. I have to wait for the show to come out. Everybody's like, oh, do a watch party. I was like, I don't know. In my head, I don't know why I thought maybe the show won't have my music. I didn't want to be embarrassed. I was like, I don't know. It's my first time. I don't know. So I'm not going to do a watch party.
Right.
So I'm I'm watching the show, and I skipped as soon as it dropped. The first 3 episodes dropped. I knew mine was on episode 3. I skipped the first 2. I went straight to episode 3. Like, I'm watching this show to see my song. Like, what? I'll go back. Like, but let me see.
Right.
Let me see.
Right.
So just me, I'm watching the show, and it's like 15 minutes go by, and I'm like, I haven't heard the song yet. I'm starting to panic. Now, mind you, it's an hour-long show. I'm just impatient.
Mm-hmm.
So around the 16-minute mark, I hear the beat like in my homegirl's vocals, and I'm like, oh, should we in here? Like, we on here? Like, and I'm just like jumping on the couch, so excited. Like, this is like the first one. And that was my very first placement. So shout out to the gang who I worked on that song with. That was Ogechi, AD, and this guy named Hells. We did it at his studio. And that song is still to this day a vibe. Like, we can vibe. It's like an Afrobeat, upbeat, good energy, like fun song. So yes, that was my first placement.
Man, that's excellent, man. That's great. That is great. And artists and people who are listening to this are going to, hopefully that inspires somebody to go out there and basically just like we say, shoot your shot. You know what I mean? Just because you mentioned that you sent in a song and it didn't get picked up, right? So you had both sides. It might not happen right away, but that doesn't mean you stop.
Exactly.
You keep going.
Exactly.
And those pools are huge. I can only imagine how many songs those things have.
Man, exactly. Especially with the non-exclusive libraries. Like, it's so much music, like, which is where metadata comes in. Like, when you upload music, they ask you to fill out metadata, which is like a lot of descriptions of like, what type of instruments does your song use? What are the lyrics about? What are the moods that the song conveys? It's all of this, and it's tedious, and I hate doing it. It's my least favorite part of sync, like filling out metadata. But that's what people do. They go to the libraries and they search songs from the 2000s with horns that feel dark. And if you've done your metadata properly, your song might pop up in a search. That's how you get picked. So that's how you stand out, making sure your metadata is good. But like you said it, like, we did that song 2 years prior to it getting placed. We submitted it for one thing, it didn't work. And then like 2 years later, it worked. So that also speaks to making sure your music could stand the test of time. Like, it's not a fad. It's not like this is like what's hot right now, so we're making it. Like, you got to make music that's going to be good forever, because like in sync, it doesn't matter. Like, labels want your music to be fresh. They're always looking for something fresh if you're trying to get signed to a label. In sync, it don't matter when the song was created. If it fits for what they're looking for, then they're gonna sync it.
Oh, good. Wow. That's awesome. And also, with doing that, you've been able to more recently go and speak about this in person. I noticed you've been going into schools and in different universities and places, where students are learning about this, and you're able to speak in front of them about that experience. So that's awesome as well. How has that been? How has the experience been with basically teaching some of these young producers, about this sync licensing?
I love it, honestly. Like, I was just at Georgia State yesterday, and they had a music program, which was like a listening session. And I was just giving them insight on sync and, listening to some of their music. And I enjoy it because like I wish I could have gone to college initially for music production. You know, I'm grateful for the path that I took. I think it all worked out the way it was supposed to.
Sure.
But it's like seeing these students in a program, you know, like in their college learning what I wish I could have did in
Sure.
college. Just like if I could come and be a resource and give knowledge, especially with how long it took me to actually start getting my music placed. Once
Yeah.
I started getting into sync, it took me a long time to actually get a placement. So it's like if I could like shorten that amount of time for somebody else by just spreading the knowledge, like why wouldn't I? So yeah, like I enjoy going and speaking and talking to students. I have a lot of speaking engagements coming up actually. Yeah, like on the docket. I'm going out to LA next week to speak. I have a virtual conference this weekend. I got one in March. Like
Come on.
it's just I'm speaking a lot because I love to share knowledge because like that's something that helped me when I moved to Atlanta, going to panels, learning about things from people who were just willing to share information. So I don't believe in gatekeeping at all. I don't like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Listen, man, we gonna have to set aside where we can just talk again because I know we can talk about a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
We can
Yeah.
talk about a lot. Yeah, that's another story too. But I just want to, again, and I said this before we started before we started the Zoom, is just, congratulations, man. I'm Superman proud
Thank
of
you.
everything you're doing, and it's great to be able to watch from afar and know that this is somebody who I've had experience with, and we worked together in the past, and
Yeah.
have created a strong enough relationship where it doesn't matter if we all this time goes by, we know that if there's a call out of one of us,
Mhm.
we'll answer.
Yeah.
Well,
Of course.
I appreciate you being on this platform. Appreciate you being guest number one.
Hey,
Yeah,
numero
guest
uno. Let's
number
go.
one. Yeah, so you are setting the tone. This is our pilot episode, so you are setting the tone. How can you be reached? Get the book. How can they find out about any events you might be speaking at? If they're in the area, they can go see you live. Just break it off.
Yeah. Awesome. So the main thing is my Instagram. If you follow me on Instagram, it's London Elixir, Elixir.
Mhm.
I'll pop up and I post about like everything that I'm doing, like all my events and stuff. Like that's the best place to stay up to date. My website is good for if you want to check out the book or, DJ events, things like that is www.londonelixir.com. Again, Elixir.
Mhm.
And I mean, like, that's the best way to stay connected. Everything is on my website, and I post a lot of stuff on my Instagram. So I also offer consultations for anybody who has more questions about sync. And you're just trying to figure out what type of business you need to have in order, or just where to start, things like that. Like I offer consultations. That information is at the link in my bio as well on Instagram. So yeah, Instagram and my website.
There it is. There it is. And speaking as someone who knows, for anybody who is around your area, London is very approachable. So don't feel nervous. Just do
Right.
it the right way. Approach the right
Right.
way. There's still a right and wrong way. But you have always been very approachable, and you hit it on the head, and I totally agree about sharing information. Thank you for sharing that on this platform. For somebody that might see the episode or hear the episode on one of the podcast channels, we really, really appreciate that. And just continued good luck and success, London.
Thank you. Appreciate you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is What's Your Hustle. We're going to see you next time, folks. Peace.